Hey everyone, this is Finx MTG here with a Commander deck tech on Sauron the Dark Lord. So I wanted to make a Commander deck that featured a lot of the cards from the Lord of the Rings set from Magic, and this Commander fit the bill pretty nicely here. This one's going with a Reanimator strategy. So the idea here is that we're using a lot of the cards from the Universes Beyond set for Lord of the Rings. At the same time, we're using the gameplay mechanics such as tempting yourself with the ring. And it has it right on our commander here. We're making orc armies with our commander and other cards. And the Reanimator strategy is primarily focused on bringing back big dragons that have huge gameplay effects when they come in and they attack. So I like the whole theme of using orc armies, Nazguls, dragons, the ring. Goes along with the theme, and it's also using very interesting mechanics with this commander here. You know, normally people say, oh, when the ring tempts you, you may discard your hand, and people are like, discard your hand? Why would you want to do that? Well, on this one, you draw 4 cards. So we need to get an advantage of discarding cards. So the idea is that we are putting giant dragons into our graveyard and then reanimating them at a later phase in the game. This deck is around a power level 7. It could go a little bit higher, again, just because of this commander. He is very strong. That's a bracket 3 right now. So I had to take out some of the game changers because some of the game changers, such as Orcish Bowmasters from Lord of the Rings, there's a lot of game changers in there. So I had to take some of those out and take away a little bit of the flavor. So if you want it to be the 4 bracket, you can do that as well. But the idea here, again, is that we have a number of Reanimator targets. We have 7 dragons in total. We have about 10 or 11. We have 11 strong Reanimator targets that we can do, including the dragons. But as you can see here, this is number 1, the Ancient Brass Dragon. When it deals combat damage to a player, you're rolling a d20. When you do, put any number of target creature cards with total mana value X or less from graveyards onto the battlefield under your control, where X is the result. So this one is a lot of fun when you get this one out early and you have other creatures in your graveyard. So even if you only have one Reanimate or Animate Dead spell and you get this on the board, he can bring in the other ones that you have out there. You also have Ancient Silver Dragon, which is amazing. Basically, it's an 8/8 flying. When it hits a player, you draw cards equal to a d20 dice roll. And then you have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. You never have to worry about it again. We have Ancient Copper Dragon. Whenever Ancient Copper Dragon deals combat damage to a player, you roll that d20 and you create a number of treasure equal to the result, which means you basically get like a whole nother turn's worth of mana available, and the turn after this one will be huge, most likely as well. We also have one of my pet cards, Drakuseth, Maw of Flames. Again, whenever he attacks on this, he does a massive damage to everything. He's a 7/7 flying, and then he deals 10 damage divided among a few different targets. And again, it's other targets can be creatures, they can be players, they can be planeswalkers. So it's pretty incredible the amount of impact this can have when it comes out on the board. You can wipe out some of the decks that have a few small creatures that they were relying on. So that one is a lot of fun there as well. And then, just in case you want to give them haste if you're reanimating multiple dragons at the same time, we have a card like Dragon Lord Kolagan. Flying haste 5/5. Other creatures you control have haste. Don't forget that he has haste himself, like I always do. But once you get this in, if you bring all of the dragons back at once, they can all attack on that turn. And again, you saw the combat damage effects on attack or on dealing damage that you can do. Here is a lot of potential boom that you can have just on dealing damage. And then the second part doesn't really matter here for this format. But Cavern Horde Dragon, Lord of the Rings, little flavor there. Costs X less to cast, where X is the number of artifacts an opponent's control. And opponent control. So sometimes there's that one player that's playing the artifacts deck that can really help this out. If not, it's a little bit discounted. You could get him out early, but again, we're reanimating. He has trample and haste. And the big item here, when he deals combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token for each artifact that player controls. And as you can see, these are 6/6 up to 8/8 flying dragons that all are going to be hitting players for a lot of damage very early in the turns. We also have Twin Flame Tyrant, a 3/5 here. If a source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals double that damage instead. So that's a way to get through with your combat damage when things are getting a little dicey. Then we have Razaketh, the Foul-Blooded. This is, of course, a demon, not a dragon, but it's just so good I put it in the deck. And it works well with the commander because you have Flying Trample 8/8, but if you pay 2 life and sacrifice another creature, you can search your library for a card and put the card into your hand, then shuffle your library. So you can literally just keep tutoring whatever cards you want by sacrificing whatever creatures you have on the board. Let's go back onto Sauron here, and then see exactly what he does and why this is so effective, right? So when he comes out, yes, he's 6 mana. We do have some mana ramp in here. He should be coming out a turn early. And potentially after somebody's already, or yourself has already wiped the board of creatures, then he comes out and then he's, here for the party. Ward, sacrifice a legendary artifact or legendary creature. I can't remember a game recently where I had somebody that was willing to sacrifice their legendary creature, meaning their commander usually, to be able to target this with something. So Ward will counter that spell if they don't sacrifice it. And the only legendary artifacts that people run really are the One Ring and I don't know what else. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, amass Orcs 1. Now keep in mind that is similar to like a Tauren Mauler or one of those other cards where it's a little bit annoying to keep track of, but every time somebody's casting a spell on your turn, their turn, any turn, you're creating an Orc army, Lord of the Rings Orc army, similar to the zombie army that we used to have in older Magic sets, but it gets +1/+1 for each spell that is cast. So this guy gets pretty big pretty quick. So we have a main line of attack of doing items with our dragons, and the way we get the dragons, you can see here, whenever an army you control deals combat damage to a player, the ring tempts you. Whenever the ring tempts you, you may discard your hand. And then a lot of people see this kind of card and are like, discard your hand? Why would I want to do that? Well, in this deck, you discard it and you're probably not having many cards in your hand at that point, and you're discarding your dragons, and then you draw 4 cards, hopefully drawing into your reanimation spell. So the idea is that when you play your commander, you're going to have an Orc army that's on the board because somebody after you is going to cast a spell, so he's at least going to be, 2/2, 3/3 coming around, and you can attack a player for that. Sometimes they'll let it through and you can trigger that, and we also have a ton of ways to trigger our commander. Don't be scared of going to this commander and being like, well, I never want to discard my hand if I have 2 or 3 cards. The point of the deck is to discard your hand and draw 4 cards and just filter through your cards and use your graveyard as basically a second hand. Some people play this with a foretell style where they're putting cards out of their hand and then they're drawing more, or they use escape cards or cards with flashback from their graveyard. We're focused on the reanimation strategy because it's really cool to put dragons into play and attack. We also have a backup with the Orc army here that we can have a card like Goblin Bombardment. You sacrifice a creature, it deals 1 damage to any target. Very simple card, only 2 mana to get out. But the thing is, it works so well with the combination, with the synergy here, where you have Sauron making an Orc army every time somebody casts a spell. Somebody casts a spell, you have an Orc army on the board. Somebody casts another spell, you have the trigger go on the stack for Sauron to put another +1/+1 counter on this one, make them a little bigger, and instead you sacrifice this to the Goblin Bombardment. Deal 1 damage, not to necessarily a player, but to any target. You could ping off a planeswalker, ping off a creature, or you can just keep whittling around people's life total, right? So this goes away. The trigger from Sauron resolves. Because you have no Orc army, you put the 0/0 token on the board, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and you can do that for every spell. Not that you're casting, it's every spell the opponents are casting there, whenever an opponent casts a spell. So that's a little bit of a backup. There's also another card I'll show you later in the deck that has a similar effect. But that's basically the idea of this one. Again, if you want to see the full deck list and some of the tags that I put on the cards, you can see that on Moxfield. I'll put the link in the description. But this is a lot of fun here with the dragons. But we also have, we have to stay alive to be able to get to the point where we can play these nice big dragons, right? So the earlier game, we play cards like the Nazgul, right? So the Nazgul, very on theme. We have 9 different Nazguls that come out. And when these cards come out, if you've seen my other deck with the Lord of the Rings cards, then you'll know that these can do a lot of work when you start combining them. And the idea here is that when you do get a few of these out, it's triggering, again, when the ring tempts you, you can discard your hand. So it's triggering our commander's ability. Also, these are 1/2s, but when it comes in, it would be a 2/3 death touch. And if you're putting more of them in, they're triggering each time, right? So the ring tempts you. When it tempts you, put a +1/+1 counter on not just this guy, but each wraith you control on the board. And then, of course, a deck can have any, well, it can have up to 9 cards named Nazgul. So we were lucky enough to get the different Nazgul early on. Again, this deck, some of the Lord of the Rings cards did get a little pricey now, so you might want to wait for some type of reprint. But if you got it when it first came out, you're in a good spot. There's a lot of alternatives to these cards that are Lord of the Rings set that you can use as a cheaper alternative. We also have an upside down card. We have a create a 3/3 black wraith creature token with menace. The ring tempts you. So this is similar to the Spellslinger deck that I had before that was blue and black. You can check that out one later. But you're creating this wraith with menace. That is another way that you can make tokens, again, for your Goblin Bombardment to do shenanigans, or just to be making a board presence. So this card is in the deck because by itself basically builds you an army. It's really good. And then at the end, if you ever get to the fourth part of the saga, you gain control of up to 1 target creature a player controls until end of turn for each opponent. And then they gain haste, they attack you. You know, you can attack, and you should be swinging for the win at that point when you have that many creatures. So In the Darkness, Bind Them is really good card in this deck. And again, everything going along with the Lord of the Rings theme here. If you haven't seen the movies, you should. They're a little bit slower pacing, but they're worth it. So you have this here with the Nazgul as well. We also have some nice card draw. One of my favorite cards in the decks that uses the ring tempts you mechanic. Coal of the Ring. At the beginning of your upkeep, it tempts you. So you don't have to worry about doing anything else. This enchantment is going to make it happen every turn. Whenever a creature, it becomes your ring bearer, you pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. So this is nice because we have multiple times when we can trigger the ring tempts you with our Nazguls and other effects. So you can be doing this multiple times. And if you can't do it multiple times, you can at least do it in your upkeep and draw a card. We also have Frantic Search from Urza's Legacy. I love this version of the card. But you draw 2 cards, then choose and discard 2 cards. Untap up to 3 lands. So it's a lot of fun in your opening hand with this deck. You want to make sure that you have at least 1 piece of ramp because, yes, Sauron is a bit expensive. You could also have a card that can enable you to discard cards, such as Frantic Search. And then you want to have a dragon or a Reanimator spell so that you can really get the ball rolling, but at least have a dragon in your hand so that when you do trigger Sauron, you're going to be discarding that one and you'll have something to reanimate. This one's great because after you draw those cards, you untap the 3 lands and you'll have mana to cast your reanimation spell. We also have Teferi's Ageless Insight. If you would draw a card, except the first one you draw on each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. So the commander says we would draw 4 cards, and then we have a replacement effect here to draw 8 cards. So you do this one time, you're pretty much the main enemy in the game, and you're in a state where they all have to go against you. All of your opponents have to go against you to take you out, or you're going to win. So this is a fun card that really does a lot of nice stuff with the commander. And then we have the One Ring. 4 mana, colorless, indestructible. It's not banned yet. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, gain protection from everything until your next turn. Now, it's nice, I talked about earlier, the Nazgul, right? The Death Touch stops people from attacking you because you are going to be a little bit open earlier in the game, and you need ways to slow people down so you can get to the theme of your deck. You need a few turns to be able to get to that. We also have the cards like the One Ring, where if you don't drop all the cards all over, you have protection from everything until your next upkeep. Then at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each burden counter. You tap it and you draw 1. You put a burden counter on it and all that, and you just draw a ton of cards. But it is great because it goes along with our theme here. And there we have a few cards that work well with the synergies of the deck. And of course, we need our mana ramp. So we have Soul Ring. And I do like this Lord of the Rings version of it. I got a few copies of this one. I thought it looked pretty good. Wayfarer's Bauble. Chromatic Lantern. Again, we are a 3 mana commander, So sometimes we run into situations where we're not going to have the right mana to tap when we need it. This resolves that, or this solves that problem by making lands you control tap for adding 1 mana of any color of your choice. We have a nice special promo version of Arcane Signet, Talisman of Dominance, because these are the color pairs that we're most concerned about. Felwar Stone, because if somebody has an exotic orchard or any of those lands, or if they're just playing the colors that you have, you can add the mana of the color you need. And then we have the classic Dark Ritual. This is the Mirage art, which I'm particularly fond of. 1 black mana, add 3. It's great to get your commander out early. It's great to do a surprise spell out of nowhere. Could do a lot of things with that. We also have Cabal Ritual, which is like the, I guess, watered down version of Dark Ritual. It costs 2 mana. You add 3 black to your mana pool, which is only adding 1. But if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, which is kind of the point of the deck here, you're adding 5 black mana instead. And that's where you really want to use it, and that's why it's in the deck. Solemn Simulacrum. We need some ways to get lands out of the deck and do land ramp, not just mana ramp, but land ramp. Sometimes people will run a Vandal Blast, kill all your artifacts, your soul rings, so you need something to be able to get lands out of your deck. We had the Wayfarer's Bauble as well. When it dies, it also draws a card, so that's also fun there, because if you have Goblin Bombardment, you can do it there too. Bilbo, Retired Burglar. When it enters or leaves the battlefield, the ring tempts you. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. Okay, so this is one of the flex spots here. It's not the most powerful card, but it enables you to attack early on. If somebody's playing one of those decks where they sit back and don't play a lot of creatures, you can be creating treasure tokens, and it's just another way to trigger the ring tempting you. All right, Bilbo. Warren, Soul Trader. A lot of combos with this. We're not going on a combo focus for this deck. We're going on Reanimator. But this one can pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature to create a treasure token. Again, this works well with your commander because when opponents are casting spells and creating an orc army, you can sacrifice the orc army that is on the board to this, create a treasure token, and they get another 1/1 orc army. And you can keep doing that each time for as many treasures as you want for your next turn to have a big play. We also have on theme here the Relic of Sauron. At 2 mana in any combination of the colors of the Grixis colors that you need, then you can pay 3, tap it, draw 2 cards, then discard a card, going along with our theme of being able to discard our nice creatures to put in the graveyard. So you have the mana ramp there. And again, once we get all this stuff in the graveyard, how do we get it out? Well, we have ways to do that here. We have Entomb, first of all. If we don't have it in our opening hand and we want a Drakuseth or one of the Copper Dragon or one of the Reanimator Dragons, whatever you want, you can put it into your graveyard with Entomb. I just like this art style here from one of the Dominaria sets. We have a Lord of the Rings Reanimate. Put target creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose life equal to its mana value. You are going to be losing a bit of life in here. We do have some things to help with that, but it's really a game of like, can you get out your crazy dragons and attack before you lose too much life here, right? So Reanimate's in any graveyard Reanimator deck. It's the staple card for 1 black mana. It does what you want, and it's from any graveyard, not just yours. Animate Dead. This one gives it -1, -0 power, but it brings a card from any graveyard into the play under your control, and this enchants it. Necromancy, we're not playing this. There's a lot of text here. Basically, it's the same as Animate Dead, except you can play it at an instant speed, and then the thing dies after the end of that turn. So we don't want that. We just want to reanimate something from our graveyard for 3 mana. Stitch Together. This is a niche card here that I don't think many people know about. It's 2 black mana. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Oh, that's terrible, right? But if you have Threshold, which again, we have Cabal Ritual, we're focusing on that Threshold mechanic and getting that many cards in our graveyard. Return that card from your graveyard to the battlefield instead if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard. And that's what we're trying to do here. So for only 2 mana, you can bring something directly back from the graveyard, and it's not like Animate Dead where somebody can remove the Animate Dead and it disappears. We also have Victimize. Victimize is a lot of fun because you can sacrifice a simple Nazgul or Orc army, and you can bring 2 creatures back from your graveyard onto the battlefield directly. Also, you choose the 2 targets in your graveyard, so sometimes the person can maybe exile one of them, but the spell still resolves to the most available that it's able to resolve. Probably butchered how you say the rules with that, but you still bring back 1, even if 1 got exiled. And also, it's A resolution is sacrifice a creature, not an additional cost. So when you cast this, if you have 2 creatures on the board, somebody's like, oh, I'm going to remove the 1 creature. You can still sacrifice the other one to pay the cost when this is resolving, or it's not to pay for it when it's resolving. Incarnation Technique. Interesting card here. It is 5 mana, but it does a lot. It mills 5 cards, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And the idea with this is that it has demonstrate. So when we cast this, we can demonstrate it, meaning another player can copy it, and we copy it as well. So in that case, we're getting 2 cards from our graveyard, and we're a graveyard reanimation deck, so we're going to have good targets. And you target somebody that has a Spellslinger deck or a enchantment deck or something that doesn't have creatures in the graveyard. So yes, they get a copy, they can bring back their Sakura Tribe Elder or something like that, but it doesn't really have a big effect. Living Death, the Lord of the Rings version here. This one is great for early on if you're able to cast some cards that, you know, like that one that was right there where you mill cards, you have stuff in your graveyard. Maybe you cast your commander and you've attacked with orc armies, you've tempted with the ring and discarded several times. Then you can reanimate everything from your graveyard and put it into play. The risk with this, if you wait too long, other people are going to have a lot of stuff in their graveyard. It makes everything in the graveyard come into play, and everything that was in play goes into the graveyard. So you do have to be wary of the other cards that are in other people's graveyards. So this is a nice one right here, is the Funeral Room card. This, whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. So this, coupled with a card like Goblin Bombardment, this can actually do a ton of damage. It's also a way to gain life when your orc armies and your Nazguls are dying. And when you first cast this, you can just cast it on the funeral room side. It's an enchantment. Most people are not going to counter the enchantment, but if you get to 8 mana, you can unlock the second room here. Return all creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it's almost like a Rise of the Dark Realms, but it's only for your graveyard in particular. But that's okay for us, because at that point in the game, we're going to be having a ton of dragons in there. I've had games where my dragons have been killed 3 times, and I'm still bringing them back a 4th time from my graveyard to play. And those games are just a ton of fun, and really what you want to do with a Reanimator deck, and Sauron the Dark Lord enables that. We also have Virtue of Persistence. Early game, sometimes you have those commanders like the one that, I don't know, doubles attack triggers or something, and it's a 3/3 creature. You have to get rid of it or it's going to spiral out of control. You can give target creature -3/-3 until end of turn, and you gain 2 life. Little life gain is nice, only 2 mana. Then you put it on its adventure, and it just sits there until you get up to 7 mana later in the game. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, and comes in as an enchantment. So it's great after everybody's expelled their resources. You can cast this card, get it on the board, and it just sits there and does everything that you want it to do. And it's from a graveyard, not necessarily your graveyard. So it works to get other decks that have Eldrazi or whatever else they have in it onto the board under your control as well. We also have some counter spells because some people like to cause a little bit of trouble. So we have a beautiful Pact of Negation from the Lord of the Rings set. Don't try and get this version anymore until it comes down in price. It went up crazy in price after the set came out, but it is a beautiful one. Beautiful art. Swan Song from Lord of the Rings as well. Now, you'll notice there's only 2 counter spells here. These are really only to stop somebody if they're exiling your graveyard or if they're winning the game. Other than that, I kind of let it through, and it's more of not just your problem, it's the table's problem altogether, right? So we have that there. There's also a lot of other utility cards that we have besides our big creatures. Let me clean the board state up here a little bit. Bring these to the side. We still have our Sauron here and our ring. So we have the Balrog of Moria. Trample, haste, 8/8. When it dies, you may exile it. When you do, for each opponent, exile up to 1 target creature that player controls. This is great. I mean, it's 8 mana, so we really want to be able to do the reanimation ability on it, but we need creatures that have other effects because we're a little bit low on the targeted removal in this deck. So it's great to have it on here. Again, the haste is nice, so when he comes out, you're immediately able to attack for 8 trample damage. But he also has cycling. So if you have this in your hand, you can basically cycle him and create 2 treasure tokens to ramp up for your next turn, which is nice as well. We also have a Lord of the Rings Anger. As long as it's in your graveyard and you control a mountain, creatures you control have haste. This is just one of the cards that we want to discard to give our other creatures abilities. Oh man, Bloodthirsty Conqueror. So as I said, this is one that I recently switched into the deck. It is a reanimation target. It's not a dragon. I know it's not as cool, but at the same time, whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life, and it's a flying 5/5 death touch. So I needed to have a way to regain life after I've been taking the beatdown from some token decks or some decks with a lot of small creatures, and this was a great way to do that. It does make you a target because, again, if they're attacking your opponents, you're going to gain life. So if you play it at the wrong time, be aware that they're going to start attacking you directly. If they have, let's say, a lot of 2/2 elves, they'll attack you, lose an elf to your death touch guy, but they don't care because you're not gaining the life from the other players losing the life. Makes you a little bit of a target, but does some work. And Sheoldred, not the one with the drawing cards and stuff, but this one is actually good because it's a 4/5 menace, but when it comes in, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or planeswalker. So again, we have a creature here that has a spell effect on the creature card, which is very nice. Then we have a great special ability here for 5 mana, exile it, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. You have to have 8 or more cards in an opponent's graveyard to be able to do that. So this is more of a late game effect, but again, look at this. For each opponent, destroy up to 1 target creature or planeswalker they control. Second part of the saga, each opponent discards 3 cards, then mills 3 cards, which gives you animation targets. Put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. Exile this, then return it front face up. So it gives you a Rise of the Dark Realms as the 3rd chapter, which means somebody has to kill this enchantment before it gets to that, or you're going to win the game. And then it just puts a 4/5 menace back on the board too, instead of going to the graveyard specifically. Great card right there. Yawgmoth, Thran Physician. This goes along with the theme of creating orc armies and being able to sacrifice them for value. We have this, we have Warren Soul Trader, we have the Goblin Bombardment, lots of ways to sacrifice the tokens that we are creating. This one is just a really good card by itself and a great way to have card draw in our deck if maybe Sauron got taken offline or killed a few times. Archfiend of Ifnir is great because whenever you cycle or discard another card, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature your opponents control. So it doesn't matter if you have them. With Sauron, that's great because we're discarding our hand when the ring tempts us. So that's usually 2 -1/-1 counters up to, maybe 4 -1/-1 counters on your opponent's creatures in just one fell swoop there. You can also cycle this, which is kind of a nice way to get into your graveyard for a big reanimation as well. So you have the utility cards there. We also have targeted removal for all the problems that the other players bring to the table. We have the most important one, actually, which is kind of funny, is Sink into Stupor. Keep in mind, this is a graveyard deck. We use the graveyard as a second hand, basically. So if somebody has a Rest in Peace, or they have a Blood Chief Ascension, those are the bane of the existence of this deck, and you will have to play specifically around them or convince the table to be able to remove them because they will shut you down. Or you can just swing at them with your giant orc army to teach them a lesson for playing those cards. But for this one, I like to actually use this on the opponent's turn before me to bounce maybe a Rest in Peace or something that's exiling all my graveyards. And then I go off on my turn and I'll do my self-mill or my reanimation right there on my turn. So you have to wait for the right moment. Don't really like playing this one as a land. It is the flip land where if you pay 3 life, it comes in untapped. But we don't want to do that if we don't have to. Here we have a nice Lightning Bolt promo version here, but it's very cool. Deals 3 damage to any target. So it's a planeswalker. You can finish off a player. You can kill a creature. And then we have only like 3 tutors in this deck, this being one of them. When you cast this, the idea is that you're going to have your commander out. So the ring tempts you. Well, it would trigger your commander, but you don't need to necessarily discard your hand. This one, you would search your library for a card that shares a color with a legendary creature you control, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. So if you have some of the big creatures in that are legendary, like the dragons, you can utilize that to find one of that color. Or if you have your commander, you can basically get whatever you want. And we have a Beholder's Death Ray, also known as Snuff Out, which is pretty much in most black decks now, where if you control a swamp, you may pay for a life rather than pay this spell's mana cost. So it is one of the free spells. It does have a large cost on it. Destroy target non-black creature. It can't be regenerated. This one they printed a few times, so it came down in price, so I'm seeing a lot more. And it has a lot of value because sometimes you just want to clear out your hand so that you're ready for your Sauron trigger to discard and draw 4 cards. So imagine somebody has something, you could just kill their commander with Snuff Out, and then it gets to your turn and you know you're going to trigger your commander. So you want to have an empty, or as close to an empty hand as possible. We also have Malakir Rebirth to save one of our creatures. This is a protection spell. Pretty much put this in any deck I can. Choose target creature, you lose 2 life until end of turn that creature gains. When this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. Again, if you're using that on your commander, if they found some way to actually do the word cost and you save them, that's just like a brutal hit to your opponent. And at the same time, he would still come back and still be making the orc armies. We also have a fun card here that is a fling style effect. Kazul's Fury. It's 3 mana instead of fling, I believe, is 2. But this one could be a tapped land, just like Malakir Rebirth, if necessary. Because again, we are a 3-colored deck. But you can use it as an additional cost when you cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to any target on the board. Usually I'm sacrificing a 12/12 orc army to try and finish off an opponent. And it's just a lot of fun to throw an orc army at somebody out of nowhere, and they're not expecting that for the win, and then you can just swing in for whatever damage remaining. And again, remember, your commander is a 7/6, and you'll see some cards later on that actually help, but you can swing in for this, and if you get 3 hits on a player, that's game over for them. Remember, 21 commander damage. Bitter Reunion, 2 mana enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. This is great if it's in your opening hand, and also when you do draw into that reanimation spell after you've already put your Razaketh in your graveyard, you can pay 1, sacrifice it. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. So there's just multiple things that we want to do here. It's great. Palantir of Orthanc. Is that how you say that? I don't know. But it's a legendary artifact. Oh, this is the other one besides the One Ring that you can also sacrifice with Mount Doom. But anyway, at the beginning of your end step, put an influence counter on this and scry 2. Then target opponent may have you draw a card. If that player doesn't, you mill X cards, where X is the number of influence counters on this. And that player loses life equal to the total mana value of those cards. Once people start realizing you're putting dragons in your graveyard, they're usually just going to let you draw a card and not do the effect where you're milling and then dealing damage to them because you're a graveyard strategy. So usually you can just put a card that you want on top and they'll let you draw it. And that's after scrying 2. So this just has so much value. And if they do let you, remove the top cards and then you take damage to that, I mean, look how much damage they're going to take. If it hits, they're going to take 8 damage, 7 damage from 1 card, and then it's just one of the ones that are milled. So the longer this is out, the stronger it gets. It's only 3 mana. Great card in this deck. We also have a Morgul Knife Shadow Spear. This is a great one here. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, has trample and lifelink. Sometimes our orc army can't get through because he doesn't have trample. So we'll have a 16/16 orc army that can't really get through the 1/1s. So we give him trample with this, and then when he does hit the player, the ring tempts us and triggers our commander. We also have some permanents that the opponents can get into play that have indestructible and we can't get around them. So we can pay 1, permanents your opponent's control, lose it, hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. This is a very versatile card here, and the life gain is big on this one, and that's really one of the main ideas there, besides the Lord of the Rings flavor that we have it in. So let's go into some of the other cards that we have for board wipes. We have Shatterskull Smashing. You can see we have a lot of flip lands here because we don't have a lot of specific spells for the targeted removal. This one deals damage divided by the, X, whatever. Okay. Blasphemous Act. This one, usually paying 1 red mana, deals 13 damage to each creature. This is the best board wipe we have in the deck. If you need more board wipes, you could also put Damnation in it. You could also put Chain Reaction. There's a number of other black board wipes that you can do as well. You can do the one that makes everybody sacrifice 13 permanents. Toxic Deluge. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you pay X life. All creatures get -X until end of turn. Price came down on this a little bit because it got reprinted a ton of times, which is nice. This is the Lord of the Rings version here, if you like that art. We also have Chandra's Ignition because we have a 7/6 commander and we have an orc army that gets pretty huge. 5 mana, sorcery, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. So you're effectively saving that one creature that you cast it on. If you use it on your commander, it's 7 damage to each other creature and each opponent. And if it's a giant orc army, you might be able to kill a player that turn. A lot of fun casting this one. Oh, and then we have the Mac Daddy here himself, Cyclonic Rift, one of the game changers in the deck. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand for 2 mana. So you could use that on a Rest in Peace if you want to do your Reanimation. Or if you're up to late game, what you really want to do is be overloading on a player's turn before you for 7 mana, returning all of their permanents, and then attacking for the win on your turn. Or if you have to, just to make a comeback in the game after you are way behind. We also have a number of lands that are utility lands that go with our theme as well. You can see all the Lord of the Rings lands here. Mine is Morgul, Dark Fortress. Enters tapped, okay, but it's black mana. 4 mana, tap it, put a shadow counter on target creature. For as long as it's a wraith in addition to its other types. There's a lot of text on that, it doesn't matter. Basically, it makes your stuff unblockable. We can use that on Sauron to make a 7 mana, 7 power commander able to attack. You do that 3 times, you win. You do this on an orc army to make it able to swing in and deal the damage to finish off an opponent. Just keep in mind that the shadow means that it can't block unless the other creature attacking has shadow as well. So you do have to be careful with that. It's also kind of cool that it's a wraith in addition to its other types because, again, the Nazgul trigger on all the wraiths that are in play. Mount Doom. Okay, here we have a beautiful art style Mount Doom, and this is one of the few cards that you can use your One Ring. You can take your One Ring and toss it into Mount Doom here, and then by paying 7 mana, tapping it, giving up your legendary artifact, choose up to 2 creatures, then destroy the rest. Activate only as a sorcery. So you're keeping your commander usually, and whatever other creature you have on the board, if it's a dragon or orc army, and it's just a lot of fun if you actually get to do that. And it's also one of the few ways we have of actually destroying or removing our own One Ring besides bouncing it back to our hand if it gets too many counters on us and we're taking like 6 damage during our upkeep. Exotic Orchard, Valley of Gorgoroth, Wasteland. This is another one that, look at this art on this. There's a lot of impressive art from this set. That's why, one of the reasons why I like it. Barrow Downs, Bajuka Bog. If you don't have this one, don't spend the money on this. The price is really high just on this version for some reason. Just use a regular Bajuka Bog. Barad-dûr. Enters the battlefield tap unless you control a legendary creature, taps for black. But you can also amass Orcs X. Activate only if a creature died this turn. So just a little backup if you need a way to make some creature. Oh man, Ancient Tomb, Balin's Tomb. This is a pretty powerful card here. This is another one of the game changers. You add 2 colors, it deals 2 damage to you. Also very nice artwork on this one. The Dead Marshes, Urborg, makes every land into a swamp for you and the opponents. Be careful of Swamp Wonk, but it doesn't matter because you're usually going to have other swamps in play as well. The Blackgate. When it enters the battlefield, pay 3 life. If you don't, it enters the battlefield tapped. Add 1 black mana, and you can see we have a lot of lands that add black. Choose a player with the most life or tied with the most life. Target creature can't be blocked by creatures that player controls this turn. So for effectively 3 mana, the equivalent, you're going to make your creature unblockable when you're attacking the one with the most life. Another fun way to get in some extra damage there. And we want to be throwing, don't be holding back completely in the beginning. We want to be throwing damage around because, again, that is how we win the game, is through combat damage. We also have a number of our fetch lands and the items that have to go with that, right? So we have the Polluted Delta, the Misty Rainforest, Scalding Tarn. And then we get cards. So if we're in a situation where we don't need the mana, we get Undercity Sewers. When it enters the battlefield, Surveil 1. You got to pick these cards, the Surveil lands, up because they're basically giving you an extra card in your hand almost, because graveyards these days are just basically like a second hand. So you'll get this, put it in, put your dragon in the graveyard. Thundering Falls, same concept here. Then we have the Shocklands, Watery Grave, and a Blood Crypt. And then we have Xander's Lounge, in case you just want to make sure that you have all of the mana that you need. This is the version of the Triumph from this set, and for these colors. And then we have some other lands here. We have Command Tower. Phyrexian Tower you can use to sacrifice some of your tokens or your Nazguls when you need it. Pretty cool. This one is great because each player draws a card, then discards a card. So it's just a land that does what we need to do when we need a reanimation target. Haunted Ridge, Sulphurous Springs, nice art Reflecting Pool from Baldur's Gate. Blightstep Pathway, you can turn into a black or red mana, whichever one you need. Command Beacon, sometimes our commander dies 3 times and we're not going to pay 100 mana to get him out. So we use Command Beacon to get them to our hand to be able to cast them again and continue our gameplay. Crumbling Necropolis is the tap land for the 3 mana. Darkwater Catacombs, a nice morphic pool. And then we just threw in the basic lands as well, you know, in case somebody Path to Exiles our commander or another creature that we have. You know, I should have probably put the Lord of the Rings ones in here. Probably switch that out later, but those are the lands there. And the fetches, everything you need from the land base. Again, if you want to check out the specific deck list, check out my Moxfield link in the description. But there you have the major graveyard reanimation strategy of a Sauron the Dark Lord deck. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Check out some of my other channel content where you can see some other reanimation strategies like my Mothman deck. It's a lot of fun. I encourage you to try out a deck with reanimation if you can. And have a great day, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the content.